By far, one of the biggest questions that I get online is people ask me about early extension. What is it? Are they doing it? Is it really a big deal? And I think that a lot of people look at early extension and they kind of it's become the new over the top, if you will. So what we're gonna do in this video is we're actually gonna take a few moments, actually talk about what early extension is, talk about why for some people it's not the worst thing ever, and also try to talk about ways to where we can apply some simple drills to help you if this is something that's getting in the way of you playing better golf. So as I said, it feels to me very much like early extension has become the new catch-all, like over the top or too steep tends to be when we talk about short game. So where we need to kind of come together a little bit is we need a clear definition of what early extension is. And I don't want to get into a super technical definition of early extension because a lot of people that play golf do exactly that. They play a game, they play golf. And for most of us, we just need to speak in golfer talk. So in golfer talk, early extension is when you are finding yourself getting up on your toes very early in the transition. That tends to be when we talk about early extension. The problem we're actually talking about is when we go and we really kind of move over top of our toes and our pelvis moves towards the ball. Now, generally when this happens, we see that the club starts getting behind the body and stuck, and that's where we start having a lot of problems for our early extenders and being able to control low point, and most importantly, move low point back in front of the ball because they get to where they're out on their toes and now there's nowhere to go, so now they have to kind of flip it and catch a piece of the ball. It's a very difficult way to play golf. So when we talk about early extension, we understand that we're moving too far onto the toes, but if we're moving too far onto the toes, where are we moving from? And that's why I think it's always best to look at motion through a graph. We're not going to do that in this video, but we need to understand where we're coming from and where we're going to because we're talking about a swing. So we understand that we're getting too far on our toes, but how did we get too far back on our heels in the first place that created the necessity to move forward towards the toes? So now that we're stripping the layers of this onion of early extension and what it is and how we do it and what it all actually means, we've kind of identified that it's moving too far out onto the toes, but like we said, we're moving onto the toes from the heels. So how did we get to the heels in the first place? That's where I think early extension really starts happening for most golfers, is this idea that we want to create depth in the backswing and we want to twist and we want to make torque. Those kinds of concepts tend to really lead to a lot of early extension because what ends up happening is we see that the people start moving their body out of sequence. And that's where the early extension really kind of lives and thrives. So here's what I mean by this. If we're looking from down the line and I get into my golf posture here, where we see a lot of golfers go terribly wrong is they take their trail hip and they try to open it immediately. And they really push that right hip back and away from the ball. So I'm now way back onto my right heel. My right leg is completely locked out and extended, and I've got a terrible leaning left spine towards the target. And we see this a lot with golfers these days. And I get it. We are creating a big turn, but that is a orientation and not a relative motion. We're not creating any torque and pressure loading into the trail foot. We're simply spinning out and then pushing our pelvis back towards the target. And that's what we want to stay away from because from this position, my pressure isn't on my trail foot. It looks like I've turned, it looks like I'm at the top, but we can see on force plates and on a pressure mat that I've got no pressure here. I can easily twist this foot because all of my pressure is here, which is why my spine is over here. So now the early extension is when I try to do anything with this club, I immediately start having to shift backwards and pop up. And that's moving me out towards those toes and creating that early extension and moving towards the ball in transition and at impact. So to put it bluntly, I think the easiest way to treat a bad case of early extension is to really work on our sequence and make sure that we're not moving the trail hip away from the ball first. I'm not saying that the trail hip doesn't rotate and open and move back and up. It most certainly does. It just doesn't happen first. So a couple easy drills we can kind of do here is we can take just something simple. I've got a little platform here. You can use a lot of different things, but all we're gonna do is we're just going to get that platform behind my heel. And now when I put some pressure and some weight on my right foot, I'm really feeling that more in the front part of my foot underneath the ball. So now anytime I push there, that pressure is wanting to stay much more forward and not wanting to go into the heel. So what we're gonna do here now is we can make some swings. And now when I feel like I'm twisting, I feel like I'm twisting more through the ball or the cuboid of the trail foot. And that allows me to create more rotation within the fib head. And now I'm doing a much better job sequencing the loading of that trail leg. Now we can see that my hip has rotated some, but it can rotate more now. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the first part of that. Okay, so there's the first part. And now when I rotate, then it turns a little bit more. But we can see now that I can't twist my foot because I've got all my pressure on that right side. So now when I go to push left, now I can actually twist and find that heel, and I can stay away from the early extension of moving out towards my toes. So in a weird way, working on staying more on the ball of the foot is really the easiest way to get from moving away and creating that early extension. So if this is too difficult and you don't have the range of motion within the arch of the foot, you can also use a force pedal. Very, very simple. We're gonna do this one a little bit different. So instead of the back of the foot, we're actually gonna cue more of the cuboid, okay, more right here in the ball of the foot. Cuboid is spelled C-U-B-O-I-D. You can look it up on Google, it'll show you exactly where it's at. But what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna load into that cuboid, and I can feel that I'm pushing that force pedal down as I do that. So I really wanna feel like I squish that force pedal as I take the club back. And once again, that's gonna keep me loading more through the front of the leg and keeping me from pushing that right hip back and getting into a position where I push my pelvis left and get into that scenario where I create early extension in the transition and downswing. So we hope you found this video helpful in understanding early extension. Like we said, it tends to catch a lot of the heat for a lot of the problems of the golf swing, and a lot of people could easily avoid this early extension problem simply by working on getting the golf club moving in a little better direction versus kind of sitting back and down into that trail heel and moving that trail hip back and down. We definitely want to try to feel like we're pushing more through the cuboid and the ball of the foot because we need to get that trail hip moving up. We don't want to have it sitting down and moving back because once again from there the only thing I can do is move towards my toes and create that early extension scenario. So if you have any questions, any comments, want to know more about early extension, please hit us up in the comment section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. It helps us a ton. So thanks so much, and until next time, keep grinding.